Some official truths only survived because nobody questioned them. Today, 33 biggest lies in US government history that people believed. Like just a weather balloon at Roswell and no domestic spying before the hearings. These stories shaped wars, ruined lives, and rewired trust for decades. Stay for number 33 because the last one is absolutely unreal. Project mkultra, CIA mind control experiments, kept secret. People were drugged, traumatized, and never told why it happened. In the 1950s, CIA chemist Sidney Gottlieb chased mind-controlled dreams. They funded hospitals, prisons, and universities, often using front groups. Unwitting subjects were slipped LSD during routine tests or casual drinks. One target, Army scientist Frank Olson, fell from a New York hotel. For years, the CIA called it an accident, then paid quiet settlements. Most records vanished when Richard Helms ordered files destroyed in 1973. Later Senate hearings revealed bizarre subprojects, from hypnosis to toxins. If it was that secret then, what else stayed buried? 2. Roswell's weather balloon story that later fell apart. One press release turned a desert crash into a lifelong mystery. In July 1947, rancher Mac Brazel found wreckage near Roswell, New Mexico. The local Army airfield first bragged they recovered a flying disc. Hours later, officers walked it back as a plain weather balloon. Strange foil, sticks, and tape fueled whispers among nearby base families. Decades later, officials pointed to Project Mogul, a secret spy balloon. That new explanation arrived after UFO culture had already exploded. Witness memories grew bigger, while paperwork stayed frustratingly thin. So was it confusion, cover, or both colliding at once? 3. Area 51 existed, and the government denied it. Thousands saw weird lights, and officials pretended nothing was there. Deep in Nevada, Groom Lake hosted secret flights during the Cold War. Kelly Johnson's Skunk Works tested the U-2 where maps stayed blank. High-altitude planes looked like stars, confusing pilots and desert locals. Rumors spread that aliens lived behind fences, not new aircraft. Meanwhile, the A-12 ox cart screamed overhead, faster than most missiles. Workers flew in on unmarked jets from Las Vegas, then vanished. Only in 2013 did documents plainly acknowledge Area 51's name. How many UFO stories were really black projects hiding in daylight? 4. The Gulf of Tonkin attack that greased Vietnam War. One night at sea helped launch a war for millions. In August 1964, the USS Maddox traded fire off North Vietnam. 2 days later, reports claimed another attack involving Turner Joy. Radar blips and rough weather made the second incident deeply murky. President Lyndon Johnson pushed the Tonkin Resolution through Congress fast. That vote expanded U.S. military action without a formal war declaration. Later reviews suggested the second attack likely never really happened. Yet the momentum was unstoppable, and Vietnam escalated dramatically. What if a few bad readings changed history's entire direction? 5. Watergate, the White House claimed it wasn't involved. A small burglary spiraled into a presidency collapsing in slow motion. In 1972, men broke into the Democratic offices at the Watergate complex. Cash, bugging gear, and weird connections led back to Nixon's campaign. Top aides like H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman tried controlling damage. Then came the Oval Office taping system, quietly recording everything said. Investigators traced hush money and pressure on the FBI and CIA. John Dean flipped, and the cover-up became the central crime. The Supreme Court forced tape turnover, and the story finally snapped. How did a clumsy break-in expose an entire culture of secrecy? 6. Iraq WMD claims sold as solid intelligence. A whole invasion rode on weapons that never showed up. After 2001, the Bush administration focused hard on Saddam Hussein. Officials said Iraq hid chemical and biological stockpiles and nuclear ambitions. At the United Nations, Colin Powell presented slides and dramatic claims. Sources like Curveball fed stories that later collapsed under scrutiny. Inspectors searched, warehouses opened, and the big caches stayed missing. After Baghdad fell, teams kept digging, but found no active programs. Trust cracked, and intelligence failures became a defining global lesson. How do scary assumptions become unstoppable facts once repeated enough? 7. Tuskegee promised treatment, then left men uninformed. Men came for help and instead became research subjects for decades. In 1932, U.S. health officials began a study in Macon County, Alabama. They recruited black sharecroppers with syphilis, promising care and free meals. When penicillin became the standard cure, participants still were not treated. Doctors tracked symptoms, mailed reminders, and kept the real diagnosis cloudy. Many families suffered, while the program quietly continued into the 1970s. Whistleblower Peter Buxton leaked details, forcing the study to end. Public outrage led to lawsuits, apologies, and new research rules. How many people trusted the system, not knowing the game? 8. The Pentagon Papers exposed we're winning in Vietnam. Suddenly, the official story looked like a carefully edited movie. Analyst Daniel Ellsberg copied secret Vietnam documents from the Rand Corporation. In 1971, he handed them to newspapers, risking prison to publish. The files showed leaders privately doubted victory while projecting confidence. Presidents from Truman through Johnson appeared trapped by earlier decisions. The Nixon administration tried stopping publication, claiming national security harm. The Supreme Court allowed printing, and the leak became historic. Ellsberg faced charges until government misconduct derailed the prosecution. What changes when citizens finally see what leaders say privately? 9. NSA bulk collection. We don't spy on Americans. Phone records piled up in databases, long before most realized it. After September 11th, the NSA expanded surveillance under secret legal interpretations. Programs collected call metadata, like numbers and time, not content. A court order later showed a major carrier feeding vast records. Officials reassured Congress and the public while systems kept running. Then, Edward Snowden leaked documents in 2013, blowing doors open. Suddenly, everyday calls looked like breadcrumbs tracked across the country. Courts and lawmakers fought over limits, reforms, and oversight. When is safety just a label for watching everyone quietly? 10. COINTELPRO, FBI denied targeting activists and leaders. Movements fractured from the inside, without seeing the puppet strings. From the 1950s, the FBI ran COINTELPRO against domestic political groups. J. Edgar Hoover feared communists, civil rights organizers, and anti-war activists. Agents planted informants, forged letters, and spread rumors to spark chaos. The Black Panthers were hit especially hard in places like Chicago. A break-in at an FBI office exposed documents describing the program. Congress investigated, and the Bureau promised reforms and new guidelines. Still, the tactics became a blueprint for distrust across generations. How do you fight dissent when you secretly redefine it as threat? 11. Iran-Contra. No deal while arms traded for hostages. A secret pipeline connected Tehran, Washington, and rebels in Nicaragua. In the 1980s, hostages in Lebanon haunted the Reagan administration daily. Officials approved selling weapons to Iran despite public embargoes. Money from those sales was diverted to the Contra forces. National Security Council staffer Oliver North managed key parts of operations. When a plane crashed in Nicaragua, the hidden network started unraveling. Televised hearings followed, with shredded documents and missing memories everywhere. President Reagan admitted mistakes, but key facts stayed contested for years. How does a covert shortcut turn into a government-wide disaster? 12. Operation Paperclip, quietly recruiting Nazi scientists after World War II. America's space race heroes arrived, with pasts nobody wanted discussed. After World War II, US officials raced the Soviets for expertise. Operation Paperclip brought German scientists, including Wernher von Braun, to America. Many worked at Fort Bliss and later Huntsville, Alabama, on rockets. Files were cleaned, affiliation softened, and moral questions pushed aside. These teams helped build missiles, then Saturn V for Apollo missions. Meanwhile, survivors asked how former Nazis earned new American futures. The program stayed largely quiet until historians dug into the paperwork. Can triumph in space erase the shadows of where knowledge came? 13. The U-2 weather research flight that got caught. A single shootdown shattered diplomatic theater in front of the world. In May 1960, pilot Francis Gary Powers flew a U-2 over USSR. Soviet missiles hit the plane near Sverdlovsk, and Powers survived capture. Washington first claimed a NASA weather research mission went off course. Nikita Khrushchev waited, then revealed the pilot and spy camera intact. Eisenhower looked cornered, and a planned summit collapsed almost instantly. At trial, Powers became a symbol, then later a prisoner exchange. The incident proved high-altitude secrecy was never truly safe. How often does a cover story fail because the other side waits? 14. J. Edgar Hoover insisted the mafia barely existed. Organized crime grew richer, while the top cop looked away. For years, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover minimized the national mafia problem. Local police chased mob bosses, but federal attention stayed oddly limited. In 1957, the Appalachian Meeting exposed dozens of mobsters in one place. Even then, official language often avoided admitting a national syndicate existed. Pressure built after Joseph Valachi testified about La Cosa Nostra. Only then did FBI resources shift toward major racketeering investigations. Critics still debate whether Hoover feared blackmail or just misjudged. Why deny a network everyone else could see operating openly? 15. Operation Northwoods, a false flag plan seriously proposed. The most shocking part is, it reached the highest military desks. In 1962, Joint Chiefs Chairman Lyman Lemnitzer backed Operation Northwoods proposals. The ideas imagined staged incidents to justify attacking Fidel Castro's Cuba. Plans mentioned fake hijackings, planted evidence, and blame aimed outward. Nothing happened because President John F. Kennedy rejected the proposals. Lemnitzer soon left his post, but the paperwork stayed classified. Decades later, declassified files stunned readers with their cold detail. It showed how far leaders might go when frustrated by politics. If it was proposed once, what other plans never saw daylight? 16. The secret bombing of Cambodia kept from Congress. Bombs fell where maps said peace, and records said nothing. In 1969, Nixon approved B-52 strikes inside neutral Cambodia. Henry Kissinger helped manage targeting while secrecy dominated the chain of command. Operations like Menu used coded missions and falsified flight paperwork. Even some US officials saw reports that hid Cambodia behind Vietnam labels. Villages and borders blurred, and the war spilled into new countries. When details surfaced, Congress erupted over authority and hidden escalation. The revelations fueled distrust and helped drive the war powers debate. How do you oversee war when the paperwork is purposely fake? 17. CIA black sites, officially denied for years. People disappeared into places that officially did not exist. After 2001, the CIA built secret detention sites outside the United States. Locations included places like Thailand and Eastern Europe, kept off records. Suspects like Abu Zubaydah were moved through rendition flights between prisons. Lawyers wrote memos redefining rules, while officials avoided clear admissions. Journalists and investigators pieced together tail numbers and travel patterns. Eventually, governments acknowledged involvement, and courts weighed human rights claims. A Senate review later described the program in grim, bureaucratic language. How can it be denied so long when many helped run it? 18. The CIA's family jewels files hidden from the public. A secret internal dossier listed acts the CIA never wanted discussed. In 1973, Director James Schlesinger ordered employees to report questionable activities. The compilation became known as the family jewels inside the agency. It included domestic surveillance, mail opening, and cooperation with local police. Some entries referenced plots against foreign leaders during tense Cold War years. The files circulated internally, then disappeared into classification for decades. In the 2000s, releases revealed how wide the program boundaries stretched. Reading it feels like a rulebook written after the crimes occurred. Why did it take so long for the public to see it? 19. The no domestic spying line before the Church Committee. Americans were told spying stayed overseas, then learned it crept home. In 1975, Senator Frank Church led hearings on intelligence abuses. Witnesses described surveillance of activists, journalists, and even members of Congress. The revelations covered the CIA, FBI, NSA, and military intelligence unit. Before that, public statements suggested domestic spying was rare or non-existent. Behind the scenes, programs tracked mail, phones, and political organizations. Church warned about technology enabling a permanent surveillance state. Reforms followed, including oversight committees and new rules for warrants. So who watches the watchers when secrets are the entire business? 20. The FBI's secret files on Americans' political beliefs. Your opinions could land in a folder, then follow you for years. Under Hoover, the FBI built vast dossiers on activists and public figures. Agents recorded speeches, friendships, and meetings, sometimes using paid informant. Files often labeled people as subversive with little due process. During the Red Scare, a rumor could trigger surveillance and job loss. Some targets discovered folders only after lawsuits and declassification battles. The sheer volume showed how easily suspicion became a permanent record. Even lawful protests looked different when watched through government lenses. So how free is speech when someone is quietly taking notes? 21. The FBI's anonymous letter pushing MLK toward suicide. A civil rights leader received a letter meant to break him. In 1964, the FBI targeted Martin Luther King Jr. with intense surveillance. After King's Nobel Prize, officials feared his influence was growing nationwide. Audio recordings were included, gathered through wiretaps and hotel monitoring. The operation came from Hoover's Circle, approved by senior counterintelligence officials. King shared the threat with allies, refusing to be bullied. Years later, investigations exposed the letter as an FBI tactic. What does power do when it decides a preacher is an enemy? 22. The Guatemala coup, sold as a popular uprising. A government fell fast, and radio made it sound inevitable. In 1954, Guatemala's president, Jacobo Arbenz, faced a CIA-backed operation. The CIA supported Carlos Castillo Armas, training forces in neighboring countries. Psychological warfare mattered. Broadcasts claimed huge rebel armies were advancing. U.S. officials framed it as Guatemalans rejecting communism on their own. Inside Guatemala City, panic and confusion pushed military leaders to switch sides. Arbenz resigned, and the new regime reversed land reforms quickly. Later documents showed the covert planning called Operation PBS Casez. How much of a coup is bullets, and how much is storytelling? 23. The Iran coup framed as Iranians saving themselves. An elected leader was toppled, and the fingerprints stayed hidden. Britain and the CIA ran Operation Ajax to restore the Shah. Kermit Roosevelt Jr. helped coordinate money, media, and street mobilization. Paid crowds clashed, newspapers screamed, and chaos made order look impossible. Mossadegh was arrested, and the Shah returned stronger than before. Publicly, it was presented as spontaneous patriotism, correcting a crisis. Decades later, admissions and documents confirmed foreign orchestration behind events. What happens when democracy loses, but the narrative calls it rescue? 24. Project Blue Book's Nothing to See Here conclusions. UFO reports poured in, yet the official answer stayed boring. From 1952 to 1969, the Air Force ran Project Blue Book. Investigators logged sightings from pilots, police, and ordinary families nationwide. Consultant J. Allen Hynek began skeptical, then noticed stubborn unknown cases. Still, most incidents were labeled stars, balloons, or misidentified aircraft. A university panel later recommended ending the project as unnecessary. Blue Book closed, and officials said no national security threat existed. But that closure only fed suspicion that the truth was hidden. Why just saying nothing happened make people believe something did? 25. The NSA's warrantless wiretapping program kept off records. Private calls became targets under rules few citizens ever saw. After 2001, the NSA launched warrantless surveillance later tied to stellar wind. President George W. Bush authorized monitoring without traditional court warrants. Telecom cooperation and secret rooms turned infrastructure into an intelligence pipeline. When the program leaked, officials argued emergencies demanded speed over process. Lawmakers learned details late, often through classified briefings with strict limits. Courts in Congress fought over retroactive immunity and legal boundaries. Over time, parts were narrowed, renamed, and folded into new authorities. How do rights survive when exceptions quietly become the everyday rule? 26. The government's no mass data claims before Snowden leaks. Assurances sounded comforting, until the documents showed a bigger machine. Before 2013, officials described surveillance as targeted and carefully controlled. Then Snowden's files revealed broad collection, including phone and internet metadata. Programs had code names, dashboards, and procedures that looked industrial. Public debates shifted from if it existed to how far it went. Some officials clarified wording, saying records were held, not truly read. That distinction felt like hair splitting to people seeing their data gathered. Reforms followed, but trust remained damaged across parties and allies. When leaders parse language, are they informing you or escaping you? 27. The enhanced interrogation euphemism that hid torture. A softer phrase helped harsh methods slide past public imagination. After 9/11, the CIA created interrogation programs under secret legal opinions. Lawyers like John Yoo and Jay Bybee wrote memos narrowing definitions. Sites were hidden abroad, and detainees were moved through rendition flights. Officials argued it prevented attacks, while critics called it unlawful cruelty. Later investigations found many claims were exaggerated or poorly supported. The term stayed, masking reality like wrapping barbed wire in ribbon. What else becomes acceptable when language makes it sound gentle? 28. Agent Orange harms minimized, while veterans fought for care. Years after Vietnam, sickness followed soldiers home like a shadow. During Operation Ranch Hand, U.S. planes sprayed Agent Orange over jungles. The herbicide contained dioxin, a toxic byproduct linked to serious diseases. At first, officials downplayed long-term risks and stressed short-term benefits. Veterans reported cancers and neuropathy, while families feared birth defects. Lawsuits and studies piled up, but recognition moved painfully slowly. The VA gradually expanded covered conditions as evidence became harder to ignore. Vietnamese civilians also suffered, making the aftermath international and complicated. How do you measure harm when it unfolds quietly over decades? 29. The Pat Tillman story that unraveled after investigations. A national hero's death became a story shaped for television first. In 2004, NFL player Pat Tillman served with Army Rangers in Afghanistan. Initial reports claimed he died fighting enemy forces during a firefight. Inside the unit, evidence pointed to friendly fire and confusion. Commanders approved a heroic narrative before the investigation was complete. Family members pushed hard, demanding timelines, witnesses, and the real paperwork. Congressional hearings followed, exposing burned gear and withheld information. Eventually, the Army acknowledged friendly fire, and the cover story collapsed. Why do institutions protect an image even against a grieving family? 30. The Army's secret biological tests over American communities. Some Americans were exposed to microbes without ever giving consent. In 1950, the Navy sprayed bacteria near San Francisco during Operation Sea Spray. Scientists used Serratia marcescens, thinking it was harmless at the time. Residents noticed odd fog, while hospitals later reported unusual infections. In 1966, the Army tested dispersal in New York City subways. Light bulbs released Bacillus globigii, tracking how particles moved underground. Most details stayed classified until lawsuits and hearings dragged them out. The experiments showed Cold War fears could override public health ethics. If it happened then, how would anyone even know today? 31. Operation Shad. Chemical exposure tests hidden from sailors. Sailors trained for war, then became test subjects without warning. In the 1960s, DoD ran Operation Shad under Project 112 umbrella. Ships in the Pacific released simulants and sometimes real chemical agents. Crews were told it was routine training, not exposure measurement. Years later, veterans reported illnesses and demanded records of what happened. Many documents were missing, scattered, or still classified for decades. Eventually, the Pentagon acknowledged tests, and the VA began outreach efforts. Families learned late why shipmates kept comparing symptoms after service. How do you prove exposure when the government controls the paperwork? 32. Project 112. Cold War chemical testing. Kept classified. A secret testing program stretched across oceans, deserts, and laboratories. Project 112 began in the early 1960s under the Pentagon. The Deseret Test Center coordinated trials for chemical and biological agents. Some tests used nerve agents like sarin or VX, others simulants. Experiments happened on land and sea, including Hawaii and remote sites. Service members often had no clear notice they were being tested. The program stayed hidden until declassification and veteran pressure forced answers. Even then, lists of affected units shifted as archives were searched. How many experiments disappear when secrecy is treated as default setting? 33. The government downplayed radiation risks from atomic testing. Downwind families drank milk and played outside, trusting official reassurances. In the 1950s, tests at the Nevada test site sent fallout eastward. The Atomic Energy Commission promoted safety, while clouds drifted over towns. Scientists tracked iodine and strontium, but messaging stayed calm and upbeat. Some officials argued doses were low, even as concerns kept growing. Years later, downwinders described cancers and demanded acknowledgement and compensation. Documents showed risk debates existed internally, but rarely reached the public. Radiation was invisible, making denial feel easy and accountability slow. What does safety mean when you cannot see what hits you? The duck and cover drill sold as real protection. Kids learned to hide under desks as if war was weather. In 1951, civil defense films taught duck and cover in schools. Teachers ran drills, sirens wailed, and children curled beside chalkboards. The message suggested quick actions could blunt a catastrophic blast. Parents wanted guidance, and officials wanted calm, so the routine spread. Later generations watched the footage and laughed, then felt uneasy. It revealed how propaganda can sound like friendly advice in crisis. If you were there, did it feel safe or just scripted?